It doesn't matter what year you are. I'm head of the associates. If I give you an assignment, you do it.
Hey everybody, this is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous good-looking friends. This is the second part to my video analysis of the relationship between Meghan Markle and Gloria Steinem, to find out if there's something more sinister going on here. If you haven't watched part 1, I highly recommend you check it out to understand the origins of this unusual relationship. So, picking back up to where I left off, I was establishing Gloria's involvement with the Chia. As you saw in part 1, Gloria was featured in a CBS special news broadcast in 1967. This broadcast came at a time when it was exposed in an article from a political magazine called Ramparts. Seems fairly harmless, right? Actually, if you weren't around during this time or didn't have the internet, you would not think that there was anything suspicious or wrong with what she said, like I did when I first watched it.
And I was amazed to discover that this was far from the case, that they were enlightened, liberal, nonpartisan activists of the sort who characterized the Kennedy administration, for instance.
You have not been working now for the CIA since 1962. You still criticize. You were down recently in Washington?
Yes, when the story broke that I had for 4 years been a Central Intelligence agent, I was demonstrating outside the Pentagon underneath Mr. McNamara's office against bombing in Vietnam. And this didn't precisely fit with the image of a CIA agent, but then neither does the CIA.
But after further research, I have drawn the conclusion, supported by evidence, that this particular interview was propaganda serving as damage control. You see, Gloria and Meghan are cut from the same cloth. In this interview, Gloria was not being fully honest and throughout the years has been rewriting history in the same way Meghan has been trying to do, using almost identical behavior and tactics. I have come to learn that Gloria was called out by a women's liberation organization in 1978 called Red Stockings. It turns out that, just like Meghan, Gloria was a bully and tried to cover up and censor this organization's publication using threats to sue, as well as media to discredit this organization, similar to the manner that Meghan Markle has done with her critics. So here's a summary of what actually went down. On May 9, 1975, a 16-page press release was issued at the Women in Media Conference by Red Stockings of the Women's Liberation Movement, a radical feminist group, as we know, whose members initiated much of the theory, slogans, writings, and actions that helped launch the women's liberation movement in the United States, around the world, in the 1960s. The press release contained information about Gloria Steinem's key organizational position with the Independent Research Service, which was the company that she mentioned on the CBS broadcast, and it was a CIA-funded organization. The press release was met with silence from Steinem until, after several months of pressure from many feminists, she finally released a statement on August 13, 1975, in which she used certain media outlets, like how Meghan uses, that support her. And the major tactic that Steinem used here was the attempt to evade the issue raised in the press release, similar to how liars like Meghan ignore that any wrongdoing was done and instead start to deflect onto something else. And it was her effort to portray Red Stockings as a suspiciously anonymous group. So then on September 20th, 1975, Red Stockings hit back by replying in detail to Steinem's August 13th response. And despite the intimidation and evasions within the response of Steinem and her apologists, similar to what we call sugars in today's age, Red Stockings went ahead and printed on their own 5,000 copies of their theoretical journal, Feminist Revolution, late in 1975. This particular edition included the article Gloria Steinem and the CIA, which they had released in advance as part of the 16-page press release, and an article entitled From a Finnish Notebook concerning Steinem's CIA ties with the Independent Research Service at the Helsinki Youth Festival in Finland in 1962. So then in January of 1976, Red Stockings was contacted by Random House. Soon after, Random House, whose legal counsel performed the standard libel reading, and Red Stockings signed a contract for the Feminist Revolution to be published intact. However, Steinem again attempted to suppress information, this time with the forceful weapon of a threat of a libel suit. Months of correspondence followed, and added to the threats of libel by Gloria Steinem were communications from other persons and organizations of or connected to the rich and powerful who figure prominently in the Feminist Revolution article about her. Among these were Ms. Magazine, the magazine that Gloria Steinem is giving an award to Meghan about. Okay, yep, that's the one, as well as a few others that were prominent in this movement. They included the Women's Action Alliance and the League of Women Voters Overseas Education Fund. Also, Warner Communications was a part of this. So in the end, there was no libel suit filed by Gloria. However, Random House ended up abridging this pamphlet by removing those articles, probably because out of fear, just like what we see with Meghan and her threats that she makes. So anyhow, let's talk about what was in that press release that set Gloria Steinem off. So on May 9, 1975, as stated, this press release was issued by Red Stockings, and where it was titled, Red Stockings Discloses Gloria Steinem's CIA Cover-Up. And it begins to say that Red Stockings has called this press conference to release information we have uncovered showing that Gloria Steinem has a 10-year association with the CIA stretching from 1959 to 1969, which she has misrepresented and covered up. Further, we have become convinced that Ms. Magazine, founded and edited by her, is hurting the women's liberation movement. As the originators of the conscious raising and the Miss America protests, as the women who were the first to talk in public about their abortions and the need for women to control their own bodies, who coined such slogans as sisterhood is powerful and the personal is political, that launched the movement, we are concerned that Steinem, Ms. Magazine, and Ms. Corporation are endangering the feminist movement. In 1967, the New York Times made the first revelation of Steinem's part in setting up a CHIA front, the Independent Research Service. This was after Ramparts magazine had just disclosed the organization had been funded by the CHIA. In a Times interview, Steinem denied collecting names and dossiers in the course of her work. Red Stockings found, however, that Steinem's name appears as director on a 1961 publication about the Vienna Youth Festival, published by the CHIA-financed Independent Research Service, which included names and political dossiers of 82 people, including a U.S. activist. According to Steinem's first listing in Who's Who in America, she was still on the board of directors of the Independent Research Service during 1968 to 1969. In later editions of Who's Who, her period of employment with the organization is reduced from 3 years, 1959 through 1962, to 1 year, 1959 to 1960. And the later board of directorship in Washington is never mentioned again. Both Steinem's career in political journalism and Ms. Magazine were launched by the publisher of New York, Clay Felker, who worked as an editor of the newspaper published by this CHIA front. To many people, Ms. appears to be the voice of the women's liberation movement, but in actuality, it has substituted itself for the movement, blocking knowledge of the authentic activists and ideas. Ms. outgrowths proliferate into many other areas: women's study programs, television shows, feminist organizations, duplicating and many times substituting for the original authentic activists and groups that sparked the movement. It is widely recognized that one major Chia strategy is to create or support parallel organizations which provide an alternative to radicalism. Because many women now look to Ms. as the feminist press, it has become a major center for collecting names and information about the movement and individuals. So has the Women's Action Alliance, which Steinem also founded, and which shared offices with the National Black Feminist Organization in the same building as Ms. Despite its name, the Women's Action Alliance literature promotes itself as an information and referral network. In view of Steinem's secret Chia work, her failure ever to disavow it, and her continuing cover-up, we have to question how all this information is being used. So, do you guys see a pattern here? What do you think the Harkles are doing with all that information of people going through that Archewell website? This sounds exactly like what has been set up years ago. Anyhow, continuing on. Furthermore, a look below the surface shows that Ms. is putting forth an anti-woman ideology that says to women they are inferior and damaged. It is promoting token women, wonder women, and role models, and denigrating the real achievements of most women, as the accompanying article will amplify. This whole structure is backed by curious corporate financing. Women's liberation's popularity and groundbreaking successes preceded the installation of Gloria Steinem as the movement's leader by the rich and powerful. Today, all the trappings of the radical upsurge remain, but the content and style have been watered down. We have reached a point when the movement must have a revival of the radical ideas and leadership which marked its early growth and success. So can you see how Meghan Markle has been replicating the same behavior? From the media to what she says, to the hypocrisy, to the lies. She has been targeting the youth and undermining women, as well as setting the progress we have made to society with race and equality. Her divisive nature mirrors exactly what Gloria Steinem did in undermining these movements, especially around women and minorities. So this was one of the two articles that Gloria tried to get suppressed, and in it, they state that they had found a pamphlet that was passed out over at one of these youth festivals in which her name was printed clearly on the back as Gloria M. Steinem. Didn't say that she was the author, it just said that she was the director of the independent research organization. So the article says that our research has led us to some conclusions and to still more questions. It soon became clear that Gloria M. Steinem of the disturbing pamphlet was the same Gloria Steinem who had suddenly joined the women's liberation movement with so much hullabaloo. We also learned that the famous Ramparts exposure of 1967 of CIA subsidy of domestic groups such as the National Student Association had named the organization which produced the very pamphlet as a Chia front group. We now have documentation that Gloria Steinem knowingly worked for this Chia finance group on a full-time basis for a period of at least 3 years, from 1959 to 1962, as its founder and director, that her association with this group lasted as late as 1968 to 1969, when, according to her own listing in Who's Who in America, she was still a member of the Independent Research Services Board of Directors, that she never disclosed this group was Chia financed until after the information was already exposed by Ramparts magazine and after the New York Times, in the wake of the Ramparts story, named her as co-founder, that in later New York Times interviews, she defended her own actions and those of the Independent Research Service partly through the use of outright lies. So as you can see, they're calling her out for lying, and it's documented. In the previous video that I did, I made it a point to show you that when you Google Gloria Steinem, as you can see, there's nothing mentioned about this hullabaloo, as they so-called call it. It's obviously clear that Gloria is still aligned with these same people who are trying to keep this feminist movement moving forward, because ultimately what it's doing, it's serving the elite, but it's also denigrating society. So the question is, what is the reasoning behind that? So it's no secret, and there's information out there that's documented in our government archives, that the Chia has had a reputation for infiltrating other countries, for destabilization, to affect certain elections. I mean, they literally have people everywhere. So would I be surprised if tomorrow it's leaked that Meghan Markle had been planted into this British establishment to destabilize the monarchy? No. I would be more shocked to find out if she didn't have some type of connection or involvement in being planted into the monarchy or positioned in a place where she was gathering and collecting data, which I have no doubt that that had been going on to a certain extent. So I put this picture back up of showing these bracelets of linked, not ranked, and how they advertise it. What I want everybody to notice is the media outlets that this was featured in. As you can see, these are all the outlets that back Meghan Markle. Same outlets are backing Gloria Steinem. These are the very same outlets that continue to push Meghan's propaganda and other propaganda around these social justice issues in alignment with the donkeys. So many may ask, well, why are they supporting this and why are they doing this? Well, a lot has to do with those that own these conglomerates. It's all about one thing, and that's money. I mean, have you noticed a lot of these folks that own some of these conglomerates all have foundations and all are pushing this radicalized agenda based off of what the administration had been setting criteria around giving money out for? There's obviously a plan of some sort, whether it be to completely disintegrate this country into nothing, which it appears that is what's going on. But while they're doing it, the pockets of the wealthy are now being lined with our money. And that's not a lie. That's not an exaggeration. It's not a conspiracy. The proof is there in the financials of our wonderful country. You can look it up yourself to see where all this money is going and all the PR spin around the greatness of what a lot of these folks have been doing, particularly this Ms. Foundation. In their report, it's insane to see all the grants and organizations that they have been writing. When you look at their supporters, you realize that a lot of these names, or some of these names, had in the past received money from the Chia, such as the Ford Foundation. Look that up. As you can see that they have anonymous donors. That could be Soros, that could be the Chia, and we would never know. Something tells me, though, that her relationship with certain entities within our government still exist. Let's go back to the Red Stockings pamphlet and expose. In one part, they showed the affiliation of entities in the same building as the Ms. Foundation. Clearly, as you can see, there was a purpose for that. The second article that Gloria tried to suppress was this excerpt from a Finnish notebook, and I would like to read it because it does show you what the ulterior motive as well as the real purpose as to why Gloria had gone to this youth festival in Finland. So this person writes, early this year, I produced a half-hour program on the Chia for television in Finland. Although my main focus was on the Chia's domestic activities, I also wanted to discuss the role the Chia had played at the Helsinki Youth Festival in Finland in 1962. People in Finland have long suspected that, in addition to having put on a display of American culture to counteract the impact of the youth festival, the U.S. government might also have engineered the violent incidents that took place during the festival. I wanted to outline the possible connections and how they might ultimately be linked to Chia activities. I think the American press in 1962 grossly misrepresented the general feeling in Finland towards the festival. Perhaps the US government made the same error, for instance, by imagining strong opposition where there was none. In 1962, the political climate in Finland was such that only the left student groups fully supported the festival. The biggest student body took a neutral stand. It was neither for nor against it. However, the Finnish government endorsed the festival and helped in setting it up. On the whole, people in Helsinki welcomed the festival. I suspect they saw it less as a political event than as a celebration that brought color to the otherwise dull summer in Helsinki. A great many people attended the public events it offered. For me and my friends, the festival was an eye-opener, as for the first time we were exposed to third world people and their struggles. Now, this next part is important. Parallel to the youth festival, a large group of Americans suddenly organized a counter-festival. Many people went to their events too. They were appealing, and of course, in 1962, attitudes towards the US were far more sympathetic and friendly than they are now. I don't know if the counter festival actually managed to turn anyone away from the original youth gathering, though. The counter festival also published a daily newspaper, Helsinki Youth News. It was edited by Gloria Steinem and Clay Felker. It seems clear to me now that the summer of 1962 Helsinki was used as a battlefield of the Cold War. The same weapons of coercion were used there as were being used to influence events in many other European countries. The main goal was to make even mild forms of radical awareness and political activity completely benign, to dim the lights. The research I did last winter on the Chia's involvement in the Helsinki Festival led me to believe that Gloria Steinem was indeed one of the leading Cold Warriors in Helsinki. Besides finding out from secondary sources about Steinem's Chia ties through her affiliation with the Independent Research Service, I spoke with several people whom she had actually told about her involvement. So seeing that Gloria Steinem has been called out in a few lies, you go back to the 1967 video in which she talks about the riots that broke out and the specific question that was asked about if they were the ones that caused it.
What is happening here? This happened 2 or 3 nights in a row at the beginning of the
I think, as I remember, it was 4 nights altogether before it was finally quelled. The Finnish young people were so drastically against the festival that they did something which I thought was unwise, which is to demonstrate violently against it. As a result, there was Soviet pressure on the Finnish government to quell the demonstrations, and they did. They used tear gas against their own students in order to do it.
You had nothing to do with
no, nothing at all. We advised against it. We thought violence was a mistake in any case.
So knowing what we know about what was going on from an eyewitness in Finland who wrote in that notebook, it was a welcomed festival. The way that CBS had positioned this to America was showing that the communist movement and these youth rallies were violent and that America was going there to promote democracy and their representation was peaceful and they had no involvement in gaslighting the public to cause these violent riots. Somehow I don't believe that, especially witnessing right here that this is propaganda in its purest form. In researching this topic, for me, I've come to the realization that this propaganda, and in some sense I already knew this, but it didn't really, what did they say? The penny really didn't drop until I saw this footage and understanding that the media station, CBS, is the very same media station that Meghan Markle and Harry used to do that horrendous interview. And what did CBS do? They didn't apologize. They pushed this propaganda. And look at what happened. For those interested in understanding more about how the Chia and our media work together, Carl Bernstein wrote an article exposing it all. And let's just say he's a Pulitzer Prize winner. I would check it out. I'll put the link below. But yeah, CBS is one of those that had been tightly aligned with the government entity. So do I think that it's still going on? Heck yeah, I do. So knowing what we know, in 1963, this woman goes undercover as a Playboy bunny. But the front was to explore the objectification of females. But in actuality, if she was working with the Chia, then this story also is another fail. So Steinem had to adopt a fake identity for this piece or whatever that she was promoting. And it was all about taking on a persona that fooled many people. So is it possible for her to reinvent herself and become something else? Absolutely. Undercover? Yeah. For the CIA? I would think so. There's a fairly good chance that that was what was going on. It was also reported that she had been collecting data. And in the declassified files for the Chia as well as the FBI, Hugh Hefner's name comes up quite a bit, as well as Playboy magazine. And Playboy magazine, as we know, it also had a political aspect to it. So the Chia was also heavily looking at Mr. Hefner around the same time that Steinem had went undercover to do this piece. So you tell me, it doesn't take a genius to put two and two together to see that what was really going on was this woman had infiltrated these organizations to pass data back to the Chia, just like what Meghan most likely had been doing with the royal family, in my humble opinion.
You have not been working now for the CIA since 1962.
So we all know now that that was a lie. So to share my opinion and my freedom of thought, because I am allowed that as of now, feminism really has been a destructive force in destroying the family unit. And with that, what we're seeing is the instability of so many. We've seen more mental health issues. We're seeing more issues with drugs. We're seeing issues with poverty, education, and complete societal chaos and dysfunction. So when you have dysfunction and instability in the home, it gives rise to problems such as that. But it also opens up the door to opportunity for all these nonprofit organizations in which money can be obtained for some of these bullshit programs. And what is eye-opening is that they have no intention of making these problems get better or go away. So when we look at the organizations that appear on the surface to be supporting Meghan with all these propaganda pieces as well as these awards, one, yes, we know that a fair amount of money from somebody has been going into somebody in order to give off this narrative of this fake person that she is. But really, what did Meghan achieve? Well, I'll tell you what she achieved. She achieved what this agenda here in the United States is trying to accomplish, which is breaking down the traditional family unit. She managed to go in there and cause a tremendous fracture within one of the most well-known families and representations of what family is supposed to represent. She has executed an assault on tradition. She's executed assault on the church, and embodies the ethos of destruction and greed. Now, it's all fueled by the manipulation as well as corporations who are lining the pockets of these politicians. I mean, the whole system is corrupt. Now, of course, this is nothing new, but because there's such a heightened awareness around Meghan Markle, you start to see everything that she touches really is equally as corrupt and morally deficient as she is, if not worse. It has certainly opened my eyes to understanding how our media operates. I can't unsee it. Everything that I'm watching, I get so disgusted that I can't even watch it anymore because you know that we're being fed lies. As a result of being more aware and paying more attention, I'm starting to see others are also waking up to the fact that the mainstream media here in the United States is a big propaganda machine. There are a lot of lies we're being fed, especially around certain events that are going on currently. and what has been going on with our money, especially the dollar, the suppression of the truth is becoming more and more obvious. And I think that the people at the top understand that the Americans are catching on. And that's a big problem because they're now starting to see that they don't have control over our minds and making us think that we are in one place when we really aren't. And that scares them. And for Americans, what we really need to be focused on and paying attention to is what is going on with TikTok and how this is being positioned and played out into the media is the deflection around a bill that Congress is trying to pass called the Restrict Act. Many know it, or if you haven't heard about it before, you might hear it as the TikTok ban. It's being marketed as such because they're using China as the unifier for both parties to agree on. So yes, we all agree that having surveillance from that country is not good. And this bill that they're trying to pass to solve this problem of getting TikTok banned is pretty sneaky, in my opinion. So this is the bill, and I have read it. And yes, it is bad. It's everything what they're saying on how we are going to be affected, or at least people in the United States will be affected. Our Fourth Amendment rights are going to be affected, as well as our First Amendment rights. Not a good thing, guys. And this guy, he has summed it up brilliantly just to let you know that this is something that we need to be screaming about. Unfortunately, I can't write to my senator because my senator is Gillibrand. And Gillibrand is the woman who supports Meghan Markle. She's the one that gave the phone numbers out. Remember back in the day? Yeah, she never responded back to her constituent, which is me, in answering why did she give Meghan Markle the cell phone numbers of the other senators when you have constituents who follow protocol. She never responded back. But anyhow, she is backing this bill. So that already tells me what I need to know. This needs to be stopped. And seriously, if you have senators that are not a part of this gong show, you got to write to them and tell them to ban it. But this is essentially what it's about.
How we use the internet is about to fundamentally change forever, and it's terrifying. This is Bill S686, also known as the Restrict Bill. You'll probably know it as the TikTok ban bill, but it does so much more than just that. It actually does more than any bill I think we've ever seen. I encourage everyone to read it by going here and clicking the text tab, but here are the main takeaways. Foreign adversaries can change by definition, but a few are already listed. They are the People's Republic of China, including Hong Kong, Special Administration Region, the Republic of Cuba, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and of course, the Russian Federation and Venezuela under the regime of Nicolas Maduro Moros. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but these definitions can change at any time. The bill covers hardware technology like modems, routers, and home cameras, and virtual tech like VPNs, and basically bans them if they are manufactured by or used to contact and deal with foreign adversaries. Speaking of VPNs, using VPNs to bypass banned apps such as TikTok is made a criminal act under this bill, and the penalty, it's a minimum imprisonment of 20 years and a minimum fine of $250,000 or $1 million, depending if you knowingly did so to access banned content. The bill gives the federal government the power to monitor any activity used by these suspected devices, virtual or otherwise. Essentially, they can monitor what you are doing at home 24/7 without even informing you. This includes things such as routers, video games, streaming apps, smart thermostats, Ring cameras, basically anything that uses the internet. Now, the real terrifying part of all of this, as if that all wasn't terrifying enough, is that the bill goes on to state that this will happen by the president appointing a secretary of communication. That secretary then forms a group on their own without any voter input whatsoever. This group can have meetings behind closed doors. They don't have to disclose anything. They can ban and deem anything inappropriate or a risk to security at any moment in time. And if they do, they can go through your instant messages, your emails, text, basically anything that uses the internet, and they can censor it. So in summary, this bill can effectively ban anything the government deems inappropriate extremely quickly without warning. The ramifications of this range from breaking up mass communication methods to even watching the cameras in your home, aka spying on you. It really is that bad, and I am not speaking in hyperbole. Please contact your reps. I have a video on my TikTok ban playlist on how to find your representatives and tell them if they vote for this, you will support their opponents in their next primary. If I missed anything in this bill, please let me know in the comments. Share this information with anyone and everyone. I will be covering this bill and the TikTok ban throughout, so to stay informed, please make sure to follow.
So when I see headlines like this come up around the royal family, as well as hearing all the people that King Charles had invited that are not from England, but world leaders from all over the world, you got to scratch your head and say, well, what is going on? It does concern me that they are in this partnership now, because just a few months ago, this woman was out there at the UN talking about how the government needs to control what's going on the internet. See for yourself.
It will also be important in understanding more about mis and disinformation online, a challenge that we must as leaders address. Sadly, I think it's easy to dismiss this problem as one in the margins. I can certainly understand the desire to leave it to someone else. As leaders, we're rightly concerned that even the most light touch approaches to disinformation could be misinterpreted as being hostile to the values of free speech that we value so highly. How do you ensure the human rights of others are upheld when they are subjected to hateful and dangerous rhetoric and ideology? The weapons may be different, but the goals of those who perpetuate them is often the same: to cause chaos and reduce the ability of others to defend themselves, to disband communities, to collapse the collective strength of countries who work together. But we have an opportunity here to ensure that these particular weapons of war do not become an established part of warfare.
Jacinta Ardern is effectively looking to shut down free speech. That is a massive concern. So if you're a cynic about something, for instance, climate change or some other issue, she wants to shut down your views if they don't align with her. And I think that's incredibly problematic, and I think everyone should be concerned about this. But the difference with her is she delivers these speeches in a kind, in a gentle, in a soft manner, and it comes across quite nicely. So people might be, a little bit unsure that she's actually saying, no, if we don't agree with what you think, we don't want to hear it.
So you can understand why the optics look bad for Prince William and this decision to bring on Jacinta Ardern, because it is political. Let's not shy away from that. Also, the monarchy allowing this prince and his wife in the United States to intrude themselves in our government and do nothing? Like, take the titles away, strip them of that. And I think that that's what's pissing a lot of people off, because it's almost like he's okay with that. Then you have Prince William, who is a member of the WEF, and then you have Beatrice, who's a member of the WEF, and nobody's talking about Prince Andrew and all his affairs with trade. We'd be stupid to think that all of these folks are being honest with the public. If the monarchy protected Harry in such a way that we didn't realize what a douchebag he was until after he left, think about everything that they had been doing to protect the king as well as to protect Prince William. How do we not know if behind the scenes they're not in favor of really democracy? And all of this is just a dog and pony show to keep the people at bay. Honestly, when I hear things like that from Jacinta Ardern, who is very much in favor of stopping misinformation, when our own media is pumping this out daily, and we all know that other Western countries are doing the same thing as well. We see this in the UK happen all the time. So how about we not focus on putting restrictions on the actual citizens and let them keep their thoughts and keep their ideas to share with communities? And how about we put restrictions and law against the press and hold them accountable for the lies that they have been telling? Starting to realize the enormous amount of damage the mainstream media has caused to so many over so many years of this going on. Thank you, Meghan Markle, for exposing us to this world of deceit and manipulation. Guys, let me leave you on this note. This is not about favoring one political party or the other. This is about controlling people. As you can see here, This gentleman, Douglas McKay, was sentenced to 10 years in jail for expressing himself and creating a meme. It wasn't serious. Christina Wong did the same exact thing, but because she supported what the masses and the agenda is pushing, nothing happened to her. Is this the world that we're living in today? And is this going to affect us down the future? It will if we allow this stuff to continue and if we don't speak up, if we don't call out what we're seeing. Look, this video was really hard to make because there are a lot of things in here I'm sure it's most likely going to get pulled down. But it's important that people, at least some people, get to see what's going on. And if I can educate one or two more people, then that's one or two more people that can speak up when it comes time to vote. You know how Gloria Steinem says every vote matters? It does, but it has to be done together. And the only way that we can get everybody on the same page, and I think this is what everyone is so afraid of, is being exposed for the lies, the propaganda, the misinformation that they themselves are responsible for. What's sad to say is that Meghan Markle is really not that special. There are more Meghan Markles out there. Gloria Steinem is a Meghan Markle. Obviously, Oprah is a Meghan Markle. All these people are Meghan Markles because they're all doing the same exact thing. But this is just all my view from research and as an educated person, just sharing with you my thoughts and my thoughts as an individual, thoughts that God had given me to be able to express. And I'm sorry if it doesn't align with whatever ideology is being pushed. This is my right. Just like everybody else has their right to express what they want in a very civil and peaceful way. Anyhow, what do you guys think? Please leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more information, more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
That was such a fraud.